good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Jamal Mryick. I use the pronouns he, him, and his. And I am the Director of African Student Programs at the University of California Riverside. You're probably like, what does that even mean? So a super cool job opportunity. It actually aligns with my passion. So I actually oversee a Black Resource Center. What is that, you ask? So a Black Resource Center on our campus is a hub for all of our Black scholars. So all the Black undergraduate and graduate scholars on our campus, they are supported with services, programs, and a wealth of other opportunities through our department. And essentially, we've been here since 1972, and our goal is to not only support our scholars getting to campus, but also getting them to graduation and beyond.
Like, what drew you towards that profession?
It's funny because when I worked in Washington, D.C., so currently right now, I'm in Southern California. I used to live in Washington, D.C. for about 4.5 years or so. And during that time, I worked for the United Negro College Fund and a few other nonprofits. But it wasn't until I worked at the United Negro College Fund where I found a passion for working with underrepresented students like myself. And my supervisor at the time was like really trying to push me to go into higher ed. And I was like, nah. And it took one morning on the train at 7:30. I was like, this is not the life for me. This is boring. I'm doing the same thing over and over again. I don't feel challenged personally, professionally, spiritually, creatively. And transition into higher education because it's everything that I want to do and everything that I wanted when I was in college at Florida State University. And so having the opportunity to pour into other young Black scholars and support them through their journeys, it's been a beautiful alignment of the stars.
That's awesome. What do you think is like the most challenging thing that you have to deal with your job?
By far, I would say it's heart work. And so what that means to me is everything that I do with my job, with my scholars, is from the heart. And so when my scholars are hurt, I'm hurt. You might all know about the situation from earlier this year with George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, Nina Pop, and the list continues to go on, and they're hurting. And so I'm hurting because that's my community and my community reflects me, right? And so for me, it's not work that I can just take my hat off at the end of the day. It's ongoing. And so when there's issues that arise in the community, whether nationally or locally or on our campus, it affects me some way, somehow. It's connected to me, and that can be very taxing on you spiritually, emotionally. But having really good colleagues and an outlet to vent and just kind of process some things through is a beautiful thing.
Right. Let me ask you this. So in the last 5 years, like, has there been any beliefs or new behaviors or anything that's really improved your life? I know you have your job can kind of be heavy, so you need to have that, that balance. So
yeah, so I would say two things specifically. First and foremost, going to therapy. So I remember going to therapy one time in college, and it was this white woman, and I stopped going after that. And my whole belief on therapy was changed because of that. But I would say in my second year out here, I started looking for mental health services. And so going to therapy has really been a godsend to unpack a lot of trauma, a lot of hurt and harm, both that's been done to me and that I've done to myself as well as to others. And so really being able to unpack that and vent and kind of talk through a lot of these processes with someone who's very neutral. So I have my wife, and sometimes my wife is like ride or die for me, and it's like, nah, man, we gotta get them. And sometimes I think it's always beneficial to have like a neutral party. And then the other thing I would say is getting into writing a lot more. So back when I first graduated, I used to journal a lot when I was in DC, just journaling about my transition. Kind of took some time off of that, and then I turned up my journal into a website, a blog. And so just really kind of documenting my journey and just kind of sharing out the stories that I felt was important to me. So those two things for sure have been super helpful in the last 5 years.
Thank you for mentioning therapy for sure, because you know in the Black community, people are like hands off with therapy. They don't want to talk about it, you know, but it's so needed. You know, we have some of the most trauma out of everybody.
Yeah.
And, you know, but we don't want to address it. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate you putting that out there, especially as a school counselor, you know, for the
It's important.
student, for sure.
Super important.
Let me see. What advice would you give to like a smart driven elementary student or a middle school student or a high school student, you know, right now?
I would say the biggest piece of advice is archive. Really archive. And what I mean by that is like really take note of this moment in history. For my middle school and high school students, I would definitely encourage like taking pictures, documenting like what's happening in the world, whether it's getting a magazine of today's times, whether it's a newspaper, or you know, you putting something on your social media, like really understand like what's happening and have conversations about what's happening. To the elementary students, I would encourage two things. So first, I would say smile, smile, and smile some more, and then also talk about what's going on with your families, and whatever your family structure is or whatever it looks like for you. Because I think a lot of times folks take for granted our elementary students and just kind of like, oh, they don't know about what's going on. These students know what's going on. These kids know what's happening.
Right.
And so through it all, being able to still smile and still be a kid and still be young and still be joyful while we're also sitting in this tension about everything that's going on around us. So that would be my couple of cents from elementary to high school students.
Wow, I really appreciate that. I wasn't expecting you to do all three levels, but you
well, you know, everybody needs something different. My bad.
Has there been any purchases of less than $100 that really impacted your life? And if so, what were they?
A few things. So in the last year, the biggest thing that I purchased under $100 is a journal. With the journal, I'm just writing letters to my daughter, right? So just kind of letting her know like how I've been feeling and like things that I'm thinking about. So I try to like keep it with me as close as I can. Because again, archiving history, right? And so talking about Breonna Taylor and talk about like my fear that I used to have, or the stress that I used to have about trying to be a father, like very early on, or the situation about me not being able to be in the hospital. Like I was told to go and sit in the parking lot while my wife was going through the test and everything. So that was huge for me, because I didn't have that with my own father, right? So like again, documenting is really big for me. And then the other piece that has been really good, and I actually didn't buy it for myself. I bought it for my students. And so a book that I always purchase, depending on the relationship that I have with my graduating scholars, is the book The Alchemist.
Okay.
And so that was a life-changing book for me in 2009. And I have purchased that book for my graduating scholars probably ever since 2014. Wow. And so I probably spend, Paulo Coelho, the author, probably gets a good $150 to $200 a year from me just off of that book. But specifically in the last year, I purchased that book for a few of my scholars, and I always love getting the thank you for giving me that book, right? It's impacted me in a way that I wasn't anticipating for right now. And so to be able to get that is like, wow, like that meant a lot. And so I would say the journal for myself, and then for my students is buying them that book.
So if you could have a gigantic billboard that said anything you want on it for the world to see, What would that be?
This quote, the proof of desire is in the pursuit. I don't remember where I got that from. I know I heard it in college. Um, I think it's actually from The Alchemist, if I'm not mistaken. But I'm a big believer in, if you say that you're going to do something, prove it to me, right? And when I think of that quote, that has been my driving piece. And again, it's the proof of desire is in the pursuit. So it's not the destination. Like I think about my life since we graduated from college, and folks are like, oh my gosh, like you've done this, this, and this. And I was like, but you don't see the behind the scenes stuff. Like there was a lot of stuff that was happening between now and then. And that is all proof of what I wanted. When I graduated from Florida State so many years ago, it's the life that I wanted, but you just don't see the journey that it took for me to get to this point. And if folks like really sat down and asked me, they would know. But that is something that I think specifically little Black boys and little Black girls need to see and they need to hear, because the world is inundated with messages that says otherwise, that you can't do, or that you're not qualified for, you're not supposed to be in these spaces. And it's almost, to me, it's like your birthmark to be anything and everything that you want in life. And I think 2020 has showed us that it's too short to play coy. Life is too short to sit on the sidelines and not accomplish what you want in life.
For sure, for sure. Well, thank you so much for your time, and really appreciate you coming.
Yeah, of course. Like I said, anything that I can do for students, and also, I mean, the Florida State connection, right? We gotta support each other. Real quick plug. So melanatedand educated.com is it's a website. Again, melanatedand educated.com. Also coming out with a book on December 1st. It's called Dear Black Dads, Wisdom for Your Journey to Fatherhood. It's available on Amazon, Kobo, and Barnes & Noble. And it's also available in print, audiobook, and ebook. If you're interested in getting in touch with me, you're more than welcome to follow me on Instagram at Sir. So that's SIR _ Archer, ARCHER _ Draper, D as in dog, RAP as in Peter, E as in Eric, R. All right. Thanks, y'all.